This one hormone can derail any weight loss. Any weight loss. Hello, everybody. My name is Ryan. This is High Carb Regenerator, my channel. And I wanted to talk about this because, unfortunately, I've been kind of on the yo-yo again. So not like overwhelming, but I'm gonna go into that in this video. So I wanted to talk about this one hormone, but I want to give a little backstory. So those of you who watch my channel know that actually a month ago this Monday, my cat Blinky, I call her baby, passed. Right. Since September, really, I've been having a lot of mental issues because, you know, my best friend basically and I split in September. She left, really didn't get to see her in person anymore. So that was weird. I was taking over this house that used to be paid for by 4 people. And I was doing it myself with this crazy ankle of mine. And then a couple months later, like, my best friend in the world dies. So it's been a slow progression of cortisol, which is the hormone that derails you, just rising. I'm actually been having a harder time losing weight. And then I took my weight yesterday, and when before she left, I weighed 262-ish. Now I'm around 280. And yesterday I was actually feeling skinny, so I decided I don't really recommend taking your weight, but I took my weight, and it was 280. I'm like, wow. But I have been having a really hard time getting myself to eat, especially at not since Sandy left. Well, actually the week or two that Sandy left, I was really having a hard time. But since Blinky has been gone, I have really struggled to get myself to eat. So I'm trying to force feed myself at dinner to make up for it. And when you do that, your cortisol is just going to be terrible. It's going to be terrible. So my cortisol has been terrible. And people are going to come on here and say, well, I told you should eat less. And they're like, oh, wait, you have been. Huh. So this just proves that when you eat less, your cortisol goes up. The reason I knew is like the last couple nights I just couldn't sleep. And that's when I know it's really bad. I've actually corroborated this with blood tests in the past. I actually have a script for it, but I haven't gone and taken it. But yeah, so my cortisol has just been in just way too high. And when it's really high, you just can't lose weight. It's just not going to come off. And if it's high in the morning and you're struggling to eat in the morning, you are going to notice that your body is going to start storing whatever you eat as fat, because it's like, oh, we're starving, survival mode. And all of a sudden, you might start retaining water. You might start storing whatever kind of proteins and fats that you eat. It's going to start storing it. I don't know that it really stores carbohydrates. It's such an expensive process for your body. Who knows, whatever. But this just proves when you don't eat enough food, your body is going to start storing that food. And who knows? This could all be water. Could be water retention from cortisol. Because I know when you got high cortisol, your water retention does also go up pretty significantly. So I don't know. I don't have a DEXA scan. I don't think I'm going to convince a doctor to give me a DEXA scan. And I don't have one from last August. So it really doesn't matter. I have nothing to compare it to. But I do know that when the sugar intake is lower than the body needs, the cortisol is going to go up. I unfortunately have proven this to myself yet again. Now, when somebody's going through a grieving process, this is going to happen. I tried my best, but when I woke up, I just wasn't hungry. I just couldn't get myself to eat. I don't think I even started eating. And this just proves that intermittent fasting. I got fatter intermittent fasting. I don't know why people do this kind of thing. I got actually fatter, now that I think about it, intermittent fasting, because I was stopping eating probably around 10 o'clock at night, and I wouldn't eat again until like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And I got fatter. So there goes intermittent fasting. So it's just a hot mess. So anyway, I took video of myself riding bike I'm gonna put that up here. I just want a baseline, just so I can go back and so people can see what I look like right now. So I'm gonna have that in the background while I'm talking right now. I think it's only like a minute long, but I just wanted a baseline. This drives me nuts, but this also proves the fact that when your sugar, like I said, is low, and I'm actually gonna put a video right here of one that I reviewed of George. So I'm gonna put that right here. All right, so you've no doubt just seen the video of me on the bike. Yes, it's not exactly what I want to look like. You have to keep in mind, though, that I had the worst year that I've ever had in my life. You can see it under my eyes and everything. My adrenals are really struggling right now. Today is a month since she's passed, my cat. It's just been, it was a very, 2022 was the worst year I've ever had. And just keep that in mind when you're on this diet, when you're on this lifestyle, that if you're going to have a terrible year like I did, I mean, just think about everything that happened to me last year. If you've watched my channel, there was no sugar in the amount of sugar in the world that was going to undo that. So keep this in mind, because actually, if you think about it, the exact protocols that I did last year is what I did in 2016. In this here's a picture is what I look like. I know I use these pictures a lot. When you're overweight, and even when you're over, now once you lose the weight, if you have that mentality of being overweight, you really don't like your picture being taken. So I don't have a ton of pictures. I'm doing it the best I can now. And I'm on video, and I try to take pictures in the mirror to show people where I'm at. But if this is what I look like in 2016 doing this exact same way of eating, that I did last year. So keep that in mind. Know that if you're having a terrible year, if you're struggling, or if your adrenals are off, or if your thyroid's off, or your hormones are off, you're going to struggle, if not impossible, to lose weight. That's where unfortunately the CICO comes in. This is where people go on calories in, calories out. Their adrenals are overtaxed. Everything's overtaxed. Their thyroid doesn't work anymore. Their hormones are shot. And they start starving themselves and over-exercising themselves and caffeinating themselves to make up for the lack of calories and the lack of energy. I haven't had a lack of energy this year. You've seen that on the videos. But I was up against it this year. And so this is why I haven't made a ton of videos in this new year. It's just been a lot of stuff, even behind the cameras that I haven't talked about with it on the camera. It's just been too much going on. Hopefully this year is not as crazy. Hopefully, you never know. And we can get back to business, but this method works. I know it does. So here's the video by George.
Wanted to mention, a lot of people are afraid of sugar because they say it's going to make me gain weight. It is a fairly often observed fact that people who have stressed themselves chronically and then they switch to like a higher sugar diet, they may initially put on weight. However, recent studies have discovered that this is not due to the sugar. It's due to the fact that chronically restricting sugar upregulates the enzyme that produces cortisol. And cortisol is known now as the primary driver of especially the mid-body obesity, the visceral fat. And there's now human studies with cortisol blockers showing that it can actually cure diabetes type 2 and lead to sustained weight loss without any caloric reduction, change in exercise habits, or change in the macronutrients. In fact, this study showed that basically just by blocking cortisol, you can continue to eat the same junk food that you always did, and you will actually lose the weight, which speaks very strongly to the fact that to the hypothesis, supports the hypothesis that weight gain is an endocrine problem. It's not a lack of exercise, or it's not necessarily simply, packing on more calories. I mean, I know people who have been stressing themselves for years, and when they stop because their metabolic rate were so low due to the fasting and chronic over exercising, that they started gaining weight on a 1,000-calorie diet as soon as they stopped the low carbing. So it's not the carbs. I mean, you can't. So ideally, what should be happening is like, so if you're on a 1,000-calorie diet, right, and you're switching over, just changing the macronutrients, you shouldn't be gaining weight. But if you're starting to gain weight, it's not possible because you're eating the same amount of calories. Something else is going on, and that something is cortisol. It has now been confirmed with people with type 2 diabetes, just simple obesity, which usually precedes the type 2 diabetes. People with Cushing syndrome, they've always been known to have every single one of them to have insulin resistance and be prone to developing type 2 diabetes, etc., etc. So just a few simple human trials with a cortisol blocker demonstrated all of these can be wiped away, especially the weight loss problem, which is now 40% of Americans are obese. So
All right, so you see that he talks about cortisol going down when the sugar, and the fact that you can't lose weight when your cortisol is high, and the fact that in these studies that when they added sugar into these, I think it was rats, and I haven't watched the video. The video is going to be in there. I think it's rats and humans. The cortisol goes down, and when they do cortisol blockers, the weight just comes off effortlessly. So cortisol is a massive issue. I think that and thyroid, if those two are not in place, you are not going to lose weight. It's just not going to happen. We are in the season of losing weight, however long that lasts. And don't forget, I got my Patreon group. But anyway, I've been thinking about this. It's just another thing and another experiment that I unfortunately have done to myself to give you an example of what not to do for yourself. Because when you do this, when it constant yo-yo, you start almost not believing that you can even get to a state of being skinny. I don't even want to be skinny. I just want to get rid of the excess, right? But you start not believing it. So the longer you're on this yo-yo, the longer the mental state and everything too. So when you picture yourself a certain way, you might stay that way no matter what you're doing. So you really have to make sure that your mental state is in the right place and that your cortisol is in the right place and that your thyroid is in the right place. So this is why I suggest that you go get blood tests done to know where you're at. I don't even really need it right now. I can tell you it's too high from basically a month now of just really struggling to eat, and then trying to force feed myself at night, and I just can't eat enough. So, and the Starvation Nation or calories in, calories out warriors are going to come on here and say, I told you, blah, 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 whatever. I know the only time that I've lost weight and the people that I've seen have lost weight is when they're not watching the calories. Somebody said that I'm stereotyping Asian people. I know Asian people and Irish. I am Irish. Family's from Ireland. So I know when I see people, especially from Asian, I got a lot of Asian friends. Well, I did have. I used to belong to a Japanese group. And the entire time we were at the group, these people were eating. And they were the size. They were so skinny. They were eating the entire time. And, like I've said in a few videos, I know this Korean woman who's like, you Americans, no wonder you're so fat. You don't eat enough. So I know what I'm talking about. And I know when I come off of it that the results of that are getting overweight again. Back when I did even that raw vegan thing, I was eating like 5,000 or 6,000 calories a day. I mean, it's crazy. So anyways. No, starving yourself is not going to work, and over-exercising is not going to work. If it did, people wouldn't be dieting all the time.
We're going to review even more criticisms because you guys brought up so many, and we're going to start back with sugar again, if that's okay. So, Georgie.
And like I said, I'm going to link this down below.
What is your thought on the criticism that sugar is just empty calories? It's devoid of...
I'm actually going to reach out to this guy. I'll figure that out, and then I hope to get him on here.
Vitamins and minerals, and we don't need more empty calories as an obese nation.
Well, I mean, so is fat, right? If you're eating pure fat, it's also empty calories, unless you're eating it some kind of an animal fat that's got like remnants from whatever the animal was eating. I mean, if you're gorging up on pure coconut oil or pure olive oil, it's also empty calories. However, sugar gets metabolized differently and produces more carbon dioxide per unit than fat does. And maybe that's a discussion for a separate topic, but it's usually the levels of carbon dioxide that determine the level of mitochondrial biogenesis inside the organism. That's the cardinal regulator of mitochondrial biogenesis is basically are the levels of carbon dioxide, which is one reason when people go up in the mountain, they spend some time there, let's say like 2 weeks or even more, and then they go back down when they test their tissues. both the number and the density of the mitochondria has increased dramatically, usually 4 or 5 times, which is one of the reasons why now elite athletes train at altitude for months before like a very important event, because when they go back to lower altitude, where usually the event is happening, for the next few weeks, they actually are dramatically outperforming their peers who have been training at altitude. All other
That's crazy. That's absolutely nuts.
things being equal. So if you want more mitochondria, then basically sugar is your friend. Fats are also not bad, but usually the ones that promote mitochondrial biogenesis are the short to medium chain fatty acids found in coconut oil. They actually get metabolized pretty similar to sugar. They don't require special transport like the longer chain fats, which depend on the.
I still don't recommend fat. I mean, honestly, I don't know why he's saying that a little bit, because whenever I've added fat into my diet, my performance just always goes down.
Acid L-carnitine to get shuttled into the mitochondria and processed. So in terms of empty calories, sure, I wouldn't overdo sugar unless you're also eating the cofactors that are needed to process it, right? But as that study that I think I sent it over to you showed that if you're feeding rats like their normal chow, and then you allow them access ad libitum, which is freely, to additional liquid in the form of Coca-Cola, they were basically engulfing. They were gulping the equivalent of about 8 additional Cokes per day for an adult, and they actually were losing weight. So the whole argument.
So there goes your sugar argument, but we do get into metabolic damage at some point here. I should have written the time down, fast forwarded.
And as you know, Coke is empty calories, right? It's sugar, it's caffeine, caramel color, and a little bit of phosphoric acid, and that's about it. It doesn't have any vitamins, minerals, and whatnot like Red Bull, say, it does. But for whatever reason, those empty calories actually increase the metabolic rate of the animals. And the ones that were eating the regular chow plus the equivalent of 8 Cokes per day weighed less than the ones who were eating just the regular chow. So I mean, it's hard to explain this paradox unless you're willing to give sugar the credit that it's increasing the metabolic rate, even when it's not, entirely. Even when your nutrient intake is not entirely scaled up to meet the extra, calories coming from sugar. Now, if you're only drinking Coke, you're probably going to run into some vitamin deficiencies, specifically vitamin B1 and B3.
Of course, I don't think anybody's ever recommending that you just straight up eat sugar,
because those are cofactors required to metabolize the sugar.
And when Walter Kempner had people on the rice diet and he had them on more sugar, he actually had them on some kind of a vitamin tab. I don't know what was in it. It just said vitamin tablet.
Sugar. But the same thing is true if you're eating only pure fat. Like if you're only eating coconut oil and nothing else for a few days, you will run out of vitamin B2, riboflavin, because it's required for the beta oxidation process. And you will probably also run out of NAD, which is synthesized from niacin or niacinamide, which is vitamin B3. So if you're eating only empty calories, sure, you'll probably lead to some sort of depletion. But if you're eating a well-balanced diet and adding extra calories on top in the form of pure sugar, I don't think you'll be causing a problem. In fact, you'll be increasing the metabolic rate. Several studies. Study in rats was actually there's several citations inside of it discussing older human studies where adding up to a pound of sugar per day, pure sugar, nothing else. I guess they were just mixing it with drinks. It actually led to improvement in glycemic control in people with type 1 diabetes. So these people don't even produce any insulin. So actually improve their glycemic control, allow them to reduce the amount of insulin they were using, which is pretty striking. I mean, like for diabetes type 2, it also had beneficial effect. Actually, it reduced the level of fatty infiltration of their liver. Most people with type 2 diabetes have fatty liver disease as well. And then now that study showed that basically like the study with the rats confirmed that the same thing happens in animals. And recently there was a human study demonstrating that adding a pound of sugar per day resulted in a drastic improvement of fertility in males. I mention this because fertility in both males and females is actually one of the cardinal biomarkers of good health. It's considered an evolutionary luxury. Like if you're starving, fighting off a predator, or basically the environment is really not very beneficial, it's known that in both males and females, fertility drastically declines. In fact, very active female athletes have a now medical condition called the female athlete triad. One of the core signs of which, one of the diagnostic criteria of which, is infertility. They can't have children. And many former female athletes, when they end their athletic career, struggle for years. Some of them actually can't have children. They've damaged their ovaries and the whole energetic system supporting the ovaries to the point where they cannot have children.
Why wouldn't they have enough sugar if they're in athletic pursuits like that? I don't understand. I just don't understand.
So if adding a pound of extra pure white sugar without any cofactors drastically improve the fertility of males, it's very hard to argue that this is a bad, that sugar is somehow doing everything else wrong, but somehow selectively improving fertility. It just doesn't work that way. Fertility is a downstream effect of high metabolism, good health, and supportive environment. It allows your body to use the energetic resources that normally would deal with inflammation to focus on other things, and which allows it to better maintain its health. That's
the video. Hopefully it did you some good. Share the video if you want. Don't forget, I think I already mentioned, I got the Patreon group going. So the link for that's down below. And that's about it. Talk to you in the next video.